And the first Roadsters that we delivered, which were about a year later, actually still had the bad transmission that our suppliers had delivered us, but we locked it in second gear. So the acceleration was actually not very good, but at least you could get up to highway speed. And then we actually had to we ended up replacing the drive unit for all of the Roadster version 1 cars, because they basically, well, it didn't work.
I mean, it actually forced kind of a key invention. I mean, we essentially, re-engineered the power electronics and the motor in order to get rid of the gearbox. That was the trade-off that we made in that very early generation. And once we had done that, it was clearly better in basically every single metric. It was lighter, it was more efficient, it was cheaper, fewer parts. So it was definitely the right way to go, but we just weren't ready when we started production. So we had to catch up after the fact.
Yeah, exactly. So, in fact, I remember the conversation that JB and I had flying back from our gearbox supplier, and that was like, man, it's like, JB, we are really screwed.
I think that was the third gearbox supplier.
The third gearbox supplier, we're like, we are screwed. Now we know that if we redesign the motor, we can do this with a single-speed transmission that doesn't require a clutch, which is like order of magnitude easier to do than one that does have a clutch and has to shift gears at very high torque and very high RPM. Because essentially, if you have a single speed, then it's just it's not really a gearbox. It's just an RPM reducer. But it required us moving away from the AC propulsion motor design. So we had to redesign the motor, redesign the power electronics that powered the motor. But it was actually easier and faster for us to do that than to try to make the two-speed transmission work.
It required twice as much torque from the electric motor.
Exactly.
So it was a pretty big redesign.
Yeah, so that's why, I mean, in the end, we didn't use really any of the AC propulsion technology. Even though they did a great job with the prototype, everything had to be redesigned. And anyway, so that's just a minor taste of the Roadster challenges. There's many more. And of course, we received huge amounts of support from. Yeah, I mean, with support like this, I mean, how could you not be energized to solve the solution, figure out the solution?
It was crazy. I mean, even our friends were, sitting there reading all of these death watches, and
our customers are like, "Do you want to buy a car?" Well, it's like I was reading about this death watch thing.
And this was before we'd actually delivered to the customers that had bought the car.
Yeah.
So that was a difficult thing when they're reading about the company that's about to die, who they just bought a car from.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there was quite a bit of schadenfreude in the media who was sort of like, we had the temerity to try to create a car company. It's like, who do these arrogant jerks think they are that they can create a car company? The hell with them. They're just going to die. And there were like multiple blogs maintaining a Tesla death watch. It really pumps you up, Anyway, despite that, we managed to make the first Roadster deliveries in 2008. I got, and the rule at Tesla is whoever puts down the deposit for the car first, that's their order in line. So I put down the first deposit for Roadster 1, and it got delivered, I think, like February or so of 2008. Now, frankly, this car, although it technically passed all the regulatory requirements for a street legal car, was completely unsafe and broke down all the time. And it didn't work really. But it was stuck in second gear. But anyway, and it was all hand built. Like the production wasn't working. There were so many issues that we had to redesign the whole production process. I mean, from 2008 through 2009, we had to do a complete reboot of the design of the car, the technology, and most of our suppliers had to be changed out in the span of 2 years.
Yeah, we actually started building, I mean, per Colette's story, we started building most of the powertrain overseas because we had this, slightly misguided idea that everything must be cheaper and better if built in Asia.
Yes.
So we started building battery packs actually in Thailand in a not very
with a contract manufacturer who, I mean, they were well-intentioned but had no idea how to build battery packs.
Yeah, actually, it was a barbecue manufacturer.
It was barbecue manufacturer.
But they were neighbors or friends of one of the other engineering leaders, and we built motors in Taiwan, batteries in Thailand. We had this crazy supply chain, and not surprisingly, it was extraordinarily hard to get good quality product at the rate we needed from these suppliers. So in that time frame, that 2008 to 2009, we had to do some amazing things. Moving those factories, taking control of them, moving them back to California, and then resetting them up completely. Because what we had done in Thailand was utterly inappropriate for what we would do here. And maybe Jason,
Jason, you want to just say a few words? Like Jason was one of the key guys that really made it happen in transitioning the battery pack in particular from a contract manufacturer. Yeah, man.
Thanks, guys.
So, I mean, I remember having a conversation with Jason. It's like, Jason, dude, we are doomed if we do not insource the battery pack, because we have a supplier in Thailand that is great at making barbecues but not at making battery packs. And the supply chain is so long that it would take 6 months from when the cells were built to when the battery pack was done and in a car. And so that means we would have to make the capital cost of that supply chain was gigantic, because we'd have to pay for that all of that inventory and process. And then inevitably there would be mistakes made in the design or the fabrication of the battery pack, and we'd have 6 months worth of battery packs that didn't work. So this was like sort of doom on a stick. And it's like, man, even though like the idea of like manufacturing in San Carlos was kind of mad, it was less mad than outsourcing to a situation that definitely didn't work. So it's like, Jason, we have like basically months to insource this operation so that we can iterate rapidly on the battery pack design, iron out our issues, and tighten the supply chain.
Yeah, it was, well, I started in May of 2005, and it was funny when my friends asked me what I was doing. I would say, well, I can't say much, but this is kind of the gist. They're like, does that have any chance of working? I'm like, no, of course not, but I'm doing it. It's going to be great. And in late 2005, after having made 2 prototype batteries of very different designs, we started work on our 3rd, and also simultaneously decided that we were going to make it in Thailand. And so we were simultaneously designing, in true Tesla fashion, simultaneously designing the thing and building the factory out in Thailand. The CM, like you said, I think, Elon, was extremely well-intentioned, but just absolutely no experience. The building was open to the air, and so you would literally have animal droppings on the product. And that's when we're like, all right, we got to have a building, man. Come on.
Yeah, like, roofs are important, It's like...
And so after 2 years of spending, I spent personally 50% of 2 years there. A bunch of people in this room spent as much, if not more, time there, getting the thing running. And like you said also, the lag, like we would show up in Thailand with, I don't know if you guys know what a Pelican case is, but it's this awesome plastic suitcase. And we'd show up with 7 of them at the airport. And these guys would just look at us, what are you guys doing? And we learned the term tools of trade is kind of a hot button to just go, all right, go. Because trying to get tools and parts, anyway, We brought it back in January of 2008. We packed up 7 shipping containers, and we reassembled that factory in San Carlos at that Bing Street warehouse that Drew was talking about. We reassembled it in about 5.5 months, and that's where the battery that went in your car came from.
And by the way, just for those that don't know the Bay Area, San Carlos is like basically in the Bay Area. It's
It's 10 miles up the road.
Just 10 miles up the road. So, manufacturing things in the peninsula is like considered super mad.
Yeah, and this was kind of our, it was really early, like telltale vertical integration is the way to go. And some would argue we might have over-centered in some areas in that area, but really we had control now. We had all the engineers right there. We didn't have batteries on the water, not only from Thailand to England, but then cars on the water from England to here.
That's what I mean by the 6-month supply chain. So it would be like, we would only find out if there was an issue with either the design or the manufacturing of the battery pack 6 months after it was built. So you can imagine the insanity of having some built-in design or manufacturing flaw and have 6 months worth of inventory that all has that flaw.
Yeah, some of the same people that we were working with building the factory in Thailand, we would do missions to Hethel, to the UK, to the Lotus factory, again with these Pelican cases full of glue and popsicle sticks and mixers, and we would do these retrofits of, I think the record was like 15 batteries in 2.5 weeks, where we disassembled the whole thing, did the retrofit, assembled it. The Lotus guys thought we were insane, which
they did.
They had a point.
Yeah.
We were.
So yeah, that's a really quick story, kind of about bringing it home. 7 months reassembly.
The motor as well.
Boom. Yeah, we did the same with the motor years later.
Yeah.
So.
So just like congratulations to you and your team on making that happen. That was like an amazing feat. So
thank you. Thank you.
And I think that taught us a really key lesson that is still incredibly relevant today, which is a lot of the technology and the intellectual property was in how we actually make the products. And I think that's underappreciated by a lot of people, but no one knew how to make these battery packs. So Jason and his team and a lot of the engineering team were inventing how to manufacture the thing that we had designed. And that ended up being actually more complicating in a lot of ways to do it at rate and at high quality. And I think we learned that appreciation pretty early, and that's helped us immensely to be able to scale Model S later and eventually Model 3.
In fact, and that sort of foreshadows what I'm going to talk about at the end, if anyone's still around, which is the realization of how important it is to build the machine that builds the machine, and how much harder it is to build the manufacturing system that builds the product than it is to create the product in the first place. You can create a demo version of a product, or like a few cars worth of a product with a small team in maybe 3 to 6 months. But to build the machine that builds the machine, it takes at least 100 to 1,000 times more resources and difficulty. And it's just not something. I would say only fully came to that realization maybe even just 2 or 3 months ago. Yeah. It's a bit. I'll talk about that at the end, and just how important that is, and how I think very few people really appreciate how important that is, and how important manufacturing and supply chain is. And how I think that's actually the main problem to be solved. But I'll talk about that at the end. So then the first retail store opened up. This was in LA on Santa Monica Boulevard. It was formerly, I think, a kids' furniture store. And this was like a controversial decision at Tesla. In fact, like the original business plan, Tesla called for using the sort of the regular sort of auto dealer network and that kind of thing. But I was really adamant that like we need to improve the buying experience. Like just I don't know anyone who loves the current car buying experience of, and usually, when people tend to view buying a new car as equivalent to going to the dentist, and maybe the dentist is better, but it's just never something people look forward to. And so we thought, well, look, if we're going to make a new car company, we don't want to inherit the negativity or the sort of the bad elements of how it's been done in the past. We want to fix we want to do it right, and we want to make sure that people love coming to buy a car. They look forward to it. Like the most important thing I said to the Tesla retail team is like, look, the number one thing is that when someone comes in our store, whether or not they buy a car, the most important thing is they look forward to coming back to the store. That's it. Just like that's their goal. Make sure that when people visit our store, they look forward to coming again. That's it. Like, don't try to sell them something that they don't need. Don't try to sell. Don't sell. Just your goal is just to communicate and make people feel good. We got a lot of opposition from the auto dealers, as you might imagine, and they were not happy campers about this approach. But anyway, we felt like, hey man, we want people to love it, love buying a Tesla from all the way from like the initial buying experience to receipt of the car, ownership, the post-sale service experience. It's sort of about like you want people to fall in love. Like you want them to just just love it. So we thought we had to do it for that reason. We weren't sure if this made sense from an economic standpoint or whether it was going to serve us poorly or well. We just knew that we didn't want to replicate the negative experience that that most people have in buying a car. So anyway, we got the first retail store established in LA, and then shortly thereafter, another one in the Bay Area, in Menlo Park. In fact, this is where I first met Franz von Holzhausen. Franz, do you want to come up and tour?
So if I knew his whole history then, when I first met you, I don't know if I'd be standing up there. But
as I mentioned, like I was like the chief designer, for Tesla for the Roadster, but I sort of fully realized, like, man, there's definitely people who can do this way better than I can, but then I tried at first to outsource the design of the Model S to a few different companies. That was a whole saga in and of itself, and that really didn't work out. So it's like, man, I actually knew that I couldn't do a great job of designing the Model S, because designing a four-door sedan that's beautiful is incredibly hard. Like designing a sports car that's beautiful is relatively easy because the proportions lend itself so well to beauty. But a sedan's proportions do not. Asked around and was told, like, there's this guy Franz who's really great. I don't know if he's like going to be, willing to jump, but he's really great, and you should go talk to him. And then I think it was the first meeting we had was actually at the opening party for the Tesla store, and it was a good party. So, I think one thing Tesla's good at, we throw good parties, okay? I was like, okay, great. This is this is going to feel real good. And Franz and I, so I spent like a large portion of the night just talking to Franz at at our first store opening party. And we really hit it off. It's sort of really been like friends ever since. It's been a great honor working with you.
Yeah, and likewise. I think, in my first conversations with Elon, I had spent 16 years already in the auto industry. I was, in the early days of Tesla, I was driving an EV1 around because I worked for General Motors, and I was, experiencing range anxiety in Los Angeles, experiencing the, plugging in and having the neighbors come and unplug me in the middle of the night, and then not being able to get to work the next day. All those things that were kind of the trouble side of electric vehicles, but there's an aha moment when you just experience the acceleration, and even in an EV1, which, was heavy and not nearly like a roadster. But that moment kind of always sat in my mind. I went to Mazda afterwards and continued to try to get somehow this green initiative going. But then when I met Elon and his real drive for, changing the world and really changing the automotive industry to be much better, I realized that there's no automotive manufacturer out there that really will do this in earnest and put their money down and not have it be an R&D project. It was always going to be an R&D project for them, and it was always going to be like, okay, our main kind of appetite is for internal combustion engines, but this electric thing or this hybrid thing, we'll dabble in it and see where it goes. But talking to Elon, and then subsequent to the party, I went to SpaceX, where I saw actually kind of the proof and a little bit of the genius behind it, and the ability to, okay, if this guy can really get rockets into space, then this car thing's not going to be that
Although
hard.
I should say technically...
Although at that time he hadn't quite got
technically at that point we had actually not succeeded in getting to orbit.